Hello, good morning. My name's Diane Gayer, and I'm going to be interviewing Barbara Zucker. And, but first I want to say this is part of a 05401 program. We're starting to do live interviews. Manny Leone started 05401 about 30 years ago, which, as many of you know, is a journal full of interviews, writings, poetry, photography, art, by Vermonters, about Vermonters, but greater than that, and urban design, and just everything that we think of in terms of coloring how we live within a cultural context. And so in recognizing that the journal is still being produced maybe quarterly, maybe annually, we've started to do some live interviews with various folks in the same vein as what the publication looks like. And so to that, Barbara Zucker is here, and she's an American sculptor, an author, a feminist art pioneer who co-founded AIR Gallery in 1972 in New York. She moved to Vermont when she became chair of the art department at University of Vermont, and is a professor of art at UVM. The dates were something like 1979 to 2001. So a long career in the arts, including articles, and now a book, a beautiful book called The Second Oldest Profession, The Wet Nurse, Revered and Reviled. Sorry about that. And so I'll let you say a few words about the book, and then I'll ask you some questions.
There are so many words I could say about the book. Just that, in a sense, the book found me. I never intended to make a book. I had done, I'll tell you about how I got started later, but I made a lot of work that was relevant, sculptures, drawings, other kinds of works on paper, and it did not seem sufficient to whatever I was after. And ultimately I realized that I had done so much research, and I had traveled, and I had done more sort of delving in this subject than anything else I'd ever done, and I realized it had to be a book. And so then my focus shifted, and that's how I got started.
So just even stepping right into the title, who were the wet nurses? What, how?
Yes,
yeah.
You know, it's funny, if you ask some people what a wet nurse is, they really have no idea. They don't know what they were or what they still may be. And the wet nurses were everywhere. They were, throughout history, at least it's been charted for 2,000 years, they were women who suckled other women's children. So
for pay?
Well, yes. And I mean, incidentally, there still is tandem wet nursing, where a good friend who also has milk, has a baby, they might share it, they might give another child suck. But yes, so second oldest profession to, guess what, the prostitute. And so the profession has never been respected. Well, I shouldn't say that. Has alternately been respected and hated, and is considered, I don't know, bad, vile, inappropriate, wrong. So I would say that about prostitution, as well as the wet nurse, they're necessary. And in fact, wet nurses, women who gave suck to other women's children, kept millions and millions and millions of babies alive throughout history until the 20th century, until the late 20th century, because even in the 40s, there were wet nurses in the United States.
So backing up just a little bit, I think in reading the book, even in Egypt, we have drawings, friezes that showed the suckling of babies.
Yes.
And so it goes throughout deep history. But there was also training. Wasn't there training? The nurses had a whole, now I'm jumping centuries probably.
Go ahead.
But at some point in was it the Middle Ages or more recent 18th, 19th century, that there were training schools for the nursing?
No,
No.
because all you really had to do was whip out a breast with a nipple on it.
Oh, but
No,
they
what I
had to
mean,
be,
there
yeah,
was no training.
Okay.
There were brokers. There were wet nurse brokers. Like it was a business, you know.
Yeah.
And some men and some women had houses, and wet nurses either lived there until they found employment, or they were there for the day. So they were brokered. So there's some images in the book of women hanging out who had given birth recently, or had wet nursed someone else's baby recently. And incidentally, once you had given birth, once you had milk, you could have it throughout your productive years. You could be a milk fountain for a very long time. So anyway, there were brokers, and there were places where mostly husbands could go to find the right wet nurse.
And I think you talk about in the tests that they ran,
Yes.
the testing and the
Nuts.
squirting and the
Yes. Yeah. So I speak briefly about the squirting. I could talk
Sure.
about squirting.
I mean,
Okay,
because
so-
that leads to one of your sculptures.
Yeah. So when the husbands, big surprise, when the husbands would come to choose the proper wet nurse for their child, one of the things that women did, I don't know if they did this everywhere, but they certainly did do it in France, they would squirt their milk. They would squirt it as far as they could, and usually the woman who squirted farthest got the job. And it's kind of like, also in the book, there's the pissing putti, the little sculptures of little boys peeing, and so this kind of gave equality to women because they could make the same arc with something productive.
So there's a sculpture that you made.
Yes, it is. It's called Milk Fountain, and if you can't tell, it's a boob. There's a breast.
With milk splashing.
With milk splashing out.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
It's extraordinary. It's about 2 feet?
Three.
Three.
Three-ish.
Yeah,
A little over that.
Yeah. But
Yes.
but so for me, it fits with, and I guess I thought it was that they came out of schools like nannies were trained in schools. But you have an image of a woman in a costume with epaulettes and all sorts of.
You mean that one?
Yes.
Yes. So that's an interesting subject. If a wet nurse was hired from a specific area, France, Italy, wherever, they often had regional costumes. And it was demanded that they wear them because it was considered a kind of sign of status. It was status. They also got certain rewards. So in that image that you saw, there were these big silver balls that went into their hair.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
That was a gift that they got after a certain amount of service. And if they didn't have a regional costume, or even if they did, in France, in Paris, they were sent to the Bon Marché, which is a fancy department store that has existed for hundreds of years, and their affluent employers would buy them an entire set of clothing for winter, for summer, for spring. And they were these elegant women who were giving milk to their infant, and they were paraded around, and it's kind of an analogy that I made was they were like the best chef. If they came from France, there was a certain area called the Morvan, and if you got a wet nurse from the Morvan, you had scored, like you had the best cheese in the world. That's the analogy I would make. Anyway.
It was also an era where people were in Paris, France, maybe more in general, you were supposed to wear the clothes of your status. You were identified in the street by what you wore, and you could get stopped by the police if you weren't wearing your appropriate dress. Yeah. So that to me fit in that hierarchy piece of it. And I think there's a lot of hierarchy in all of this, of like who can afford a wet nurse.
Absolutely. Well, that's an
And didn't they have children at home?
Yes, so one of the questions that people have asked me often is what happened to these women's babies? Because first they had to give birth in order to earn the money to be a wet nurse. And there were many things that happened. One thing would be the baby is left with the parent and maybe, you know, the grandmother or something. And maybe there's a relative, maybe there is, maybe the baby will be given milk and maybe not. And if not, they were given maybe pap, which was not really nutritious, and a lot of infants died. Some did not, you know, but the child was abandoned. And or the infant of an affluent family could be sent away to the wet nurse's family in the country somewhere. Get this, they'd never seen this place. They didn't know what it looked like. They would send their infant off to be suckled for over a year. Some of them died, some of them didn't, but the infant would love the person who was giving them milk. And the wet nurse often loved the baby. And so then after a year, there was this wrenching sorrow because the child was whipped away from the person to whom she was attached to go back to his mother, her mother, and to no longer be nursed. And some of them died. More of them died if they were in the country because the mother and father could never see what was going on and they were getting paid. Fewer died, but infants did die. You know, there were no medication, no nothing. So anyway, it's kind of amazing.
And it was a rural-urban divide too, as well as a class divide in all this mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know, and I accidentally found this subject because I was reading a book of essays by a woman I respected, the late Linda Nochlin, who was a critic, and there was a picture, which you probably know, of Berthe Morisot, who was an impressionist, who's now very hot, who wasn't considered so hot then. Anyway, painting of a little kid on the lap of a woman, and it turns out that the little kid was her little kid, and the woman was in fact a wet nurse, and she was painting the wet nurse. She had hired to feed her baby.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, what? You know, what's that? And
so that triggered a whole lot.
That triggered the whole thing.
Yeah.
So people have asked me, well, how did you get interested in this, and how did you write a book, and blabbity, blabbity. And what I've also said is that if you're an artist and you get an idea, and you have to have the courage to follow out that idea, it sort of leads you to what medium you're going to use. And so to me, this was, in effect, another medium, another way to get at what I was looking for, what I wanted to say.
Well, it's a whole creative story. It's a whole creative evolving. And how long did it take you?
You ready?
Yes.
This is embarrassing.
No, we know. This stuff
It took me
fuels a long time.
35 years to do this, but you have to realize I had no idea I was making a book, right?
Well,
I was making
you did a lot of
making
process
sculpture.
along the way.
I was making drawing.
Yes.
I was making things that went on the wall. I was making research. I was going to France. I was going to Italy. And I thought, what is this, right? What are you really doing?
And the box in Italy.
Oh, you mean the archive?
Yeah.
Oh, so before the internet, remember that did exist that time? Before the internet, before you could look up anything, you almost had to go somewhere to see it. And I found archives at I think it's Archive Alinari. It's now, I think, Fratelli Alinari in Rome. And you would sit there and you'd make a request. You had to prove you were either an artist or you were a scholar or whatever. They put a big box in front of you, and you could just go through the box. And you could look at all the photographs and all the information. And incidentally, that was also true at the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
I would go to the New York Public Library maybe 3 times, sit down, they bring you a box, and you go through the box. And you could finger everything, you could look at all the photographs, you could look at all this stuff, and a lot of the images
Put them out on the table, yeah.
A lot of the images from the New York Public Library, images I either took a picture of or I was able to get. Alinari, I had to buy them initially for my inspirational work, but then once it became serious, then the publisher had to purchase them.
So do we have a photo of one of from that box, from that archive?
Yes, the woman whom we just saw had
with
that fantastic,
yeah,
that extraordinary outfit.
and the bells and the silver bells.
Oh, also.
So this photo. What's this photo?
So this is a very famous photographer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Nadar, and I am still not sure from the title whether this was his baby or not. It was unclear, but it is a famous Nadar photo, a rare one apparently.
It's quite posed. So, in a studio.
Yes,
yeah.
it is. Yeah. It is a studio photo. So, I mean, there you have it. And absolutely, I would say, shameless. You know, the thing about it is that wet nursing was so common that, you know, people just did it, whereas now, if one is feeding one's infant,
you're asked.
You're not welcome to just whip it out. You have to go to one of those little aluminum things and do it privately.
Baby
nurse
mama.
private.
Yeah. But there was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, somebody on an airline was arrested.
Taken off the airplane because she nursed her
So
child.
we have a very prudish attitude.
I.e. puritanical.
Yes.
Attitude, right.
But it's not just babies who've been nursed.
No, it isn't. Right. I mean,
Because you have a whole section on that.
Yes. Well, adults were nursed if they were ill or perverted. And there's something called interspecies feeding, in which a woman might feed a baby bear, for example. There's an American woman in the early 20th century, I forget where she lived. There's a photo in the book.
I thought it was in Maine, but yeah.
In the country, right? And there's a photograph of her. Her infant is on one breast, the little baby bear is on another breast. And she wrote a small note about how proud she was of being able to nurse both, and I think she gave the bear a name, I'm not sure. But there is an image that you'll see in a while. There it is, of a woman, I think it's in Peru, where she's nursing a baby lamb. And also sometimes the woman had too much milk, and so she might nurse
Extra.
something,
Yeah.
another animal. This was not, and this was not unusual. One incident that's in the book is the fact that a goat was the animal that's the closest to the substance that a human has. And so if a mother died sometimes or didn't want to nurse, the goat would be a stand-in. And there is a small bit in the book about
The orphanage?
no,
Okay.
a particular goat was feeding a particular child. And the goat fed this child, and one day another goat came. And the child refused the goat, and the child most probably died.
Wow.
And the goats also, if they were nursing in an orphanage, which they did, if there weren't enough women women wet nurses, the goat knew its baby.
Yeah.
And the goat would trot in and position itself, and the baby would be held up, and the baby would be drinking milk from his or her personal goat.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing.
I know, it's wild.
The relationship to animals that we know is strong, but it's so visceral in this case. I mean, it's...
Well, it's a sculpture, like Romulus and Remus.
Yes.
No big deal. Oh, look, right? Very famous bronze sculpture that I think most people know. And it's actually by two different artists. So there's a sculpture of a wolf.
It's the founding story of Rome, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these little babies,
Yeah.
Romulus and Remus, are sucking milk from the teeth of this wolf. And I think we've taken that sculpture for granted. We've never really looked at it, right? We've never looked at the implications of that sculpture.
Well, because I loved reading about it and understanding that sculpture much more. as a child, when I went to Rome and I brought an ashtray back to my mother of Romulus and Remus and the wool, my mother was horrified. And she was like, "Oh my God, this is horrifying!" And she quickly put it in a drawer, got rid of it.
Yes.
So you know, it's very interesting. So you know, however many decades later, to really understand the whole mythology around that is pretty important.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Wow.
I want to just throw in something, Diane, before you ask me something again. I wanted to tell you who St. Catherine is. Initially, many months ago, I was supposed to do an event on February 5th, which didn't happen. And the reason is because St. Catherine is the patroness of breastfeeding. She was a teenager. She loved God. She found God. She was a devout Christian, and some big muckety-muck in her town wanted her to be his lover, his girlfriend.
Okay.
And so he tried, and she was married to Christ and refused, and ultimately he had her breast removed. And she is the patron saint of breastfeeding and breast cancer, in fact.
And became canonized and became a
And
saint.
she's canonized, and there's a place somewhere in Italy, I think in Sicily, there's a wall, and the wall has been sculpted, and it's a boob wall that's dedicated to
Wow.
her. I recently saw a picture of that.
Wow.
So,
But there's some contemporary artists who are working with this as well.
I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure.
I think of, well, I can't come up with names, so that's
I have
okay.
a question
Yeah.
for you. I assume we still have time.
Yeah.
And maybe a question for anybody who's watching. Like, why do you think that almost no one knows what a wet nurse is? Why has she been erased from history? Why don't people understand how incredibly important she was as a being to keep millions of people alive, and yet people are turned off by it, have not acknowledged her presence? Why is that? What is that about? I still don't get it.
So when, let's see, you did a presentation at the firehouse
I did.
under BCA,
I did.
and raised a version of that question. And so we at home have been talking about it. And a couple pieces, I don't think it's the answer, but a couple thoughts have come into it. One is post-World War II, or during World War II, women went into the workforce. And they started getting paid for working in the economic structure of the industrial changing economy. So to go back to sort of domestic work, if we can call it that for the moment, I don't think that there was the world was modernizing and people were getting paid jobs in a very different way. And I think that broke some of it. Women weren't available as nursemaids in the same way as they had been previous to World War II. And I think that's true both in the US and in Europe, because the number the poverty in Europe was more extreme after World War II. So there was a lot more available domestic help for a while, but not for very long. So I think that cut the habit.
Well, that wasn't really my question, but,
Okay.
but actually what did happen was because of the war, women were not able to travel. Wet nurses were not able to travel and be paid, and so it ended. Also, formula had been developed. Nestle had developed formula, and now you didn't need to have anyone. You didn't need a wet nurse, and you didn't need to feed your child yourself.
Right.
You had formula, and that was like the magic answer for a long time until that too had been reversed, and now we know how good breast milk is and how bad, et cetera, et cetera.
And babies are more and more allergic. I just learned, from a recent story of a particular baby that I'm familiar with, and came off mother's milk came off Formula 1, 2, 3, and finally was okay on Formula 4 at the expense of all the others. So I don't know how this sensitivity stuff is sort of unfolding.
So that's recent.
Yeah.
There are, incidentally...
Within the last year, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are milk banks. There are
That
milk
was interesting, yeah.
in the United States and in Europe where some women donate their milk, and some women, I think, are paid. And one of the things
So you can go to the cooler, like...
Hey, hey, you want some milk?
A little bag of milk.
Right.
Milk baggie.
Right, milk bank. So I think part of it seems to be that you can get paid for all kinds of work, but to be paid for something that comes from your body, except you can give blood, right?
For free.
Yes, for free.
Yeah.
Unless, yes.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's
trying
curious.
to sell your milk from your breast is considered inappropriate, trashy, wrong.
Oh, well, without getting into all the rest of the things of our body that we can sell,
Yes.
it's interesting that
It's
this
the one
is
thing.
not.
It's the one thing.
Yeah.
You can sell your hair. You can also donate it. I'm just saying, think about it.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, I guess I'm kind of back to my question, which is, why is this profession, which it was ubiquitous in the entire world, this is a major profession, right? There are doctors, dentists, photographers, I don't know, other kinds of steel workers, miners. We know about those professions. I mean, we know about them historically. Why don't we know about the wet nurse? This is still something that I don't understand, and I can only think that it's a prejudice about women who are supposed to be, which I've written, sexy. You can wear a fancy dress and show your boobs, not the nips. You can show your boobs, but if you're really also at the same time, if you simultaneously are giving suck to a baby, well, that's just not cool. It's inappropriate somehow.
We used to hide pregnancy, and then
We did.
and then
now.
Hollywood sort of said, "Oh, it's okay," or some.
And now, yes.
And now you can show that you're pregnant and have
Very.
close-fitting clothes.
Not only close-fitting, but now there's something.
Posing. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
Astonishing. Astonishing.
It's
So
a world that's maybe always beyond understanding. But when you look at the breadth of how long women have been feeding babies, and it's such a natural thing.
forever.
Or else we wouldn't be here.
Correct. It wouldn't.
Yeah, there's a disconnect. And it's okay in another culture. It's not okay in our culture.
Oh, I wanted to say that it is still thought that in developing countries, wet nursing persists. I can't say for sure because my book stopped short there, but I don't think it's ever really ended. And I didn't say there was something that I wanted to bring up, which was something called affluent infant death. Because some women didn't want, wealthy women and their husbands wanted the breasts to stay the same. They didn't, and they wanted to go party down. They couldn't party. So stuff that happened was the kid would only be having some kind of substitute, and they died.
Yeah.
They died.
Well, there's no bonding, familiar.
There's an image that came up just now that I wanted to talk about briefly, which is very important.
Oh, there's this one here.
Yes, which is very important. Slaves nursed white babies. Slaves nursed white babies even at the expense of their own. I mean, they had to have their baby. And so it was yet another way in which they were hugely exploited. And you can tell from that photograph that baby is perfectly happy. that little white baby, as relaxed as any baby could be. This is from 1873, I think, and it's just a few, not much later than the war, and she's not a slave.
Civil War.
Yes, the Civil War, and she's not a slave, but she's still doing it.
Oh yeah.
So.
And you know, the difference between nannies and nursemaids and maids, and I mean, there's a whole hierarchy there, but the nursing part of that, you know, does taper off, but the domestic may stay within the household or not, depending on what their role is.
Yes, there was something called, in Italy, there's something called a dry nurse or a wet nurse, a baglia asciutta. And I can't remember what the other one is. So if a wet nurse was beloved and lived with the family, she could go on as a kind of governess until the child was grown. And my husband has a cousin, Italian cousin, and what he told me was that his father used to go every year to visit his wet nurse.
Oh, yes.
When he was an adult,
Yes.
he would go and see her. Because, I mean, think about it. You see...
It's a bonding that's
You see
deep.
what happens when a baby is being nursed. It's like happy time, right? And it's perfect. It's a perfect time. And how could, if it's successful, if the wet nurse is kind, if the wet nurse is loving, how could you not, right, develop an attachment to that woman? And incidentally, my husband, who is quite old now, he was wet nurse, but he doesn't know by whom. And all of his friends had wet nurses, every one of them. We're talking the 1930s.
Yeah, yeah.
And
well, a friend of mine, my age, so I'm in my 70s, she didn't have a wet nurse, but she had a nanny. And the nanny's outlived her parents. And she's still bonded. She still goes to visit her. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I feel like my mission, I've never had one before, really, you know. I mean, I guess being an artist is a slightly selfish profession. I work in my studio. I want the work to be seen, but it's mine. And this is kind of the first time in my life that I have felt so strongly about something that really these women should be written back into history. And it has been my modest effort to make that happen.
So is it translated into Italian or French?
Non ancora.
Oh, all right, maybe soon. That would be nice. I mean, I think it needs an expanded life.
I hope so.
Yeah. So where can you get the book?
Oh, yes. Well, if I don't know where you all are, or if you are all, but you can order it directly from Abbeville Press. You could go to Phoenix Books in Burlington and beg them to offer it again. You could go to BCA, which is Burlington City Arts. They had some. I think they're still selling them. And do I dare say this out loud? You could order it on Amazon.
No, you can't.
No,
you can go to Crow Bookstore, top of Church Street.
Oh, I forgot. Wait.
Yes.
No. I have to go to Crow Books because I'm sure they'll be interested.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you all for watching.
Yes, I hope you did.
One
Bye.
more 05401 Live.